Hey, welcome to another episode of Clear Lake Connections, where we talk to the people behind the businesses of Bay Area Houston, proudly sponsored by UTMB Health. Today's special guest with Rasa Yoga is Padma. Tell me about the name, because it's not your given name.
Wow, that was really great, Jamieson. Padma. Well, it's a name that was given to me after I started taking yoga many years ago, like 35 years ago. And the idea being is that the name kind of represents your self-realized nature. And what that means is that aspect of you that reflects what we're truly meant to be, how we're meant to show up. And like your given name, in a sense, there's not anything wrong with it, but it's like your given name, in a sense, kind of holds all the records of the stuff that you may be trying to transform or grow out of. And so, in a sense, like the name Padma, it's a way of kind of calling my highest self forward. Now, let me say this. When I first got the name, didn't have a plan of going by that. But we were in Costa Rica on a yoga retreat. I had my first granddaughter with me. She's like this tiny. Well, she was maybe this tiny. She actually took her first steps there. We hadn't decided what she was going to call me. And so everybody there at the yoga retreat in Costa Rica, like we were in the jungles at Costa Rica, they're like, "What is your granddaughter going to call you? What's she going to call you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I can't figure it out." And one of my students said, "What about your name that your yoga teacher gave you, Padma?" And this was 21 years ago. She just turned 21. And since then, even my kids, everybody in our family, and my closest friends started calling me that, because Padma itself is Sanskrit for lotus. And the name was given to me because, like, a lotus flower kind of starts at the bottom of a pond, kind of a not so beautiful
Works
start.
its way up.
It works its way up toward the sun, and so I've always been deeply devoted and dedicated and really working my way to the sun and overcoming life's challenges and obstacles.
Yeah, and what is it you would like to dispel what yoga is and what it isn't? Because I'm sure that's, people all have their idea of it, but what would you want to tell people it really is versus what they think it is?
Well, first of all, it's an ancient practice that is perpetual in its progressiveness and its innovativeness. The word yoga itself means whole or wholeness, to become whole. And the idea being that it's when we're in our most empowered, most whole state, whatever that means to any one individual. And for the most part, Ayurveda, because we're an Ayurveda yoga school, Ayurveda means science of life and yoga is wholeness. And the name of our school, Rasa Yoga, is the science of emotional intelligence. And so the idea is that through mastery of emotional intelligence and utilizing that under the auspices of Ayurveda yoga, we begin to reflect our truest nature, which is really meant to be joy-filled, the ability to really transcend sorrow and to just live in gratitude.
Yeah, so it's less about physical and more about emotional and spiritual.
Yeah, the physical piece of it is there because we have a physical body. But Ayurveda yoga is a science that addresses us as the whole being. So the physical body, it's often said that our bodies are, now get ready on this one, it's the manifestation of the amalgamation of our memory. So all of the experiences that we've had in our life and as a whole, it's like this body's a filter and it sort of filters through. And that's what we experience. But we're more than this body, and that we are, the term is prana. We're a pranic body. Prana means life force. It's akin to the word chi, which I think people are a little bit more familiar with. That we're an energy, we're an energetic body that we experience through breathing. Breathing is wildly important to the mastery of emotions. Because when you breathe, if I breathe really fast, my ANS, my autonomic nervous system, is triggered. And we have primarily three main responses. We have dorsal vagal, which is our most ancient response, which is to withdraw, to freeze and withdraw. Then we have what's referred to as our sympathetic, which is a little less ancient, maybe 250 million years, I think, something like that, where is fight or flight. And then we have our highest evolutionary response, which is the newest, which is empathy, the ability to empathize, like to really be able to empathize with another human, to connect, to work well and play well with others, to co-regulate well. And so coming back to this whole breath thing and how this ties together in Rasa Yoga, and that science of that and Ayurveda Yoga is that that when we can start to regulate our breathing, where it's more wave-like, just like how we want our heart to expand, contract, these rhythms in our body are wildly important. And when I start to breathe that way, my thinking starts to become more wave-like. Then my nervous system, it becomes more calm. It sends messages through the endocrine system that we can relax. We're not in imminent danger. And then we are able to connect and work well and play well with others. And so the breath, and I'm making this kind of a real overview, but the breath being so connected to our life force and to the way that we think. So let's say I have a thought and I think something like, oh my gosh, the traffic on NASA, when I go to pull out, the traffic coming out of that exit, on NASA Road 1. The minute I have that thought, if that thought is like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to me? I might be in danger. Well, boom, right away, there's a cascade of cortisol. Things start to, hormones that are being dumped into the bloodstream. And then right away, my heart rate and my breathing starts to speed up. And so it makes it very difficult to be able to function and have any mastery over my emotions at all. And so the term yoga in our world is seen as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when in fact, the body is simply seen as an instrument. Kind of like if I used to play the trumpet in the old days. I pick up that trumpet, the trumpet just being the instrument is not doing a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there.
Yeah.
Just like the body, and it's like we all breathe. People will say to me, why do I want to come and work on my breathing? I'm like, well, we all breathe, but do we breathe well? I train in meditation, and that's a huge part of being able to lead oneself and be a strong leader is the ability to bring the thinking processes into a more wave-like aspect. And, think of it like this. I just had a thought, like, the body's like the mountain, right? We're like the mountain. Our thoughts, our consciousness is like the sky. Our thoughts are like the clouds. We want the clouds to move across the mountain, just like how a mountain remains unmoved. We still want it to be there, but we don't want the mountain to suddenly start to behave like a cloud, right? We want to be the mountain in the body, and in consciousness, we want to be expanded, and we want our thoughts just to kind of move on. And so that enables us to then be able to lead ourselves, which brings me to the biggest aspect of yoga is major leadership development. But coming back to the horn analogy, I wanted to put that out there. I wasn't the greatest trumpet player in the world, but I tried. But with that horn just laying there, if I didn't practice with it, if I didn't get really focused, if I didn't learn how to read the music, and if I didn't learn how to breathe well, then what would come out wasn't very good.
Yeah. No, that's a great analogy.
And it's the same way with the body. We've got to do all of the same stuff. And, in my really early days of practicing yoga 35 years ago, and I started first, I didn't know anything about the physical practice for the first 3 or 4 years even.
So it was just the emotional and the spiritual,
breathing,
the mental.
Emotional, all of that, meditation, getting my mind very focused. Some people
I like the fact that you tied it to leadership, because once you get to that point where you can control your emotion, all the great leaders I've ever met, that was the one thing they all had in common. They could take bad news almost inhumanly well, right? And
Yeah.
and remain calm, and that's so it's kind of cool to see it tied back to leadership.
Yeah, I've been so fascinated by Ayurveda and yoga, and the way that I entered into it. I was just really blessed, because if I'd have started with a physical practice, I maybe would have just gotten caught up in that like most Americans do. But the way that I went into it, I was able to really appreciate why I needed to engage the body. Think of it like, when you look to nature, and have you ever seen like the fish in the water and how they swim so, just so beautifully, so harmoniously? Like one will go boop and the other's like, shh. Think of the body, the breath, and the mind like three fish in the water. You want them just swimming so beautifully and harmoniously. You want them coherent. And you're right, when you do that, you lead yourself. You become this empowered leader within your own self. And I think it is my firm belief that we're all meant to be leaders. There's not some that are and some that aren't. And I mean, in my early days, when I first started, I had an oil field service company. I was very successful, the way the world called success. I couldn't turn my head. I was in my 20s. I was like this. And I discovered meditation and all of this in Louisiana at the university there. They had a law professor there that was teaching it. And that's what just drew me. And I mean, I was into it because I realized, oh my gosh, I'm so much calmer, because I was in the drilling world. So I was getting these calls all the time. We were starting to do international stuff. It was very stressful. Well, the thing I started noticing is I would go to these different drilling contractors, and I'd be talking to them about whatever we had going on with our equipment. And it started kind of naturally. I didn't realize it, but I started coaching them on how to get along better. I started helping some of the engineers with conflict resolution. And one day, one of the engineers said, "You know that you could invoice us for this? Like, I would give you a purchase order for what you come in here and do."
Wow.
Especially at that time, because domestic drilling was shifting to international, and a lot of the people that were human resource managers were being let go, and the engineers were being put into these management positions. Anybody around at that time will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It was so tough for them, and it was unfair. It was really hard that they were expected to deal with this. And I started realizing, wow, there's something happening here. And it was like little bit, I ended up selling, getting out of the oil field industry. I mean, it went over a while. I started doing corporate coaching, and I was actually teaching yoga. And I never really said that, but that's what I was doing. It was everything I had learned in yoga psychology. I train psychotherapists and psychiatrists, and what they've shared with me is that what they learn in a more Western approach is so useful and so beneficial. And what they learn from what I offer in an Eastern approach is what's next. You master that part from the Western perspective, and now what do I do? So I actually have a senior student who's a psychiatrist, and she said, "You're the what's next."
So tell me how you got started then. You at some point you decided, okay, let's go with this and see where it takes us.
You mean when I was in the oil field? And
No, the opening the Rasa Yoga.
Yeah. So I sometimes say it was so organic. It's just not even funny. It was so organic because I started out early on. When I do something, I don't do it a little bit. I do it a lot. And 35 years ago, I sought out the best world-renowned teachers, primary teachers, and I went anywhere to study with them. And so I don't think I realized it, but little bit, that guy, that first time he said to me, "I could give you a purchase order for this." I went, I could live like this. I could do this every day. I would love this. So from that point, I started doing more and more corporate coaching. Now, just a little note, it was like, but it was tough doing it in that industry because I could see it needed to start from the top down. Anybody knows that you can't just go in at one level. Back then it was TQM, total quality management. You can't just start at that level. You've got to really go top down. Well, then, so I got closer to the wellness industry and just sort of got asked to talk to, it was like a particular day spa, pretty big day spa, had me come in and work with conflict resolution, helping their bottom line by people working together more harmoniously. And it was just, I can't even say there was a time that I said, I'm going to do this. It just sort of
just kept morphing.
Yeah, it really did. And then I started helping people. Like I'd have people say to me, oh my God, I feel so stressed. And I'd say, look, let me show you something. I'm going to show you a physical movement, but you have to move with your breath. And I have a little saying that I say over and over again. I teach people that when you inhale, you say, I am. And when you exhale, I am all right now. Look, you want to try?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we'll just say, take a deep breath.
I am
all right.
All right.
Right now.
Right now.
What does that feel like when you say?
Feels good.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It's so simple, right? And I started just telling people this all the time. I'd say, just do this. You know, I'd have them do a forward bend and come back up. But the most important part is not so much the forward bend, but that your breath leads you and that your mind is your I am all right now. And it's kind of become my little catchphrase now. We got it on T-shirts and everywhere. But, you know, I started noticing that it was helping them. And it just so happened that I had a small office in a house in Pasadena. And it was an accountant, a CPA, that owned the house. And I said, hey, I noticed you have a room here. Could I use this room? It was actually about the size of this room. I said, you know, I just want to offer for free. I just started out for free. And that's how it started. And it was actually the CPA. She was just awesome. I don't even think she's practicing anymore. But it was the CPA's daughter who was 17. And another woman who was very connected in the area. And the two of them started coming to see me. They told their friends. Next thing you know, we were squished in this little room. And they told me, they said, you know what? I would really love it if we had a set schedule. We knew when you were going to end these classes and how often you were going to go. And I went, well, I'll make a schedule. But if I do, you're going to pay me. And so next thing you know, I'm making a brochure, like handwriting out a deal, making copies, going, here you go. And it just went from there. And this was like in 2000. And around 2000, Oprah talked about it. Then my classes were packed. I moved into a second room of hers in the house and a third room. And then she wanted me out because the parking was going crazy. And she's a CPA. She really wasn't into having so many people in and out. But I loved her. I cared about her so much.
Was it over there off Vista?
Yeah, on Vista.
Okay, exactly
Yeah, it was in there. And that parking lot was where I had two people getting accidents, you know, and she was like...
Well, hopefully you taught them how to cope with that.
Yeah, that's pretty much... And I actually had a class going on whenever it happened one time, and I'm like, oh, no. And that was pretty much where she was like, you're going to have to get out of here, you know. And so I can honestly say that it's just been such a part of who I am that it's been a very natural, organic outgrowth. And I am a little bit different than the classic yogi that you see in America and all that. And that, you know, a lot of times the yogis tend to, I don't know, certain way of dressing. I mean, I hear with my yoga pants, but just a little bit cosmic or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly how you call it, but I guess
smelling of incense.
Yeah, you could, which I do a lot of the times. But to me, yoga is for everyone. It's for everyone. It's not for somebody that calls himself a yogi. I mean, it is the quintessential leadership. Right now, what we're seeing out in the world is we're seeing universities doing something called positive psychology. Harvard was one of the first ones that started it. Guess what? It's yoga. I have people that, I
It's a
train.
Western idea that the East has already done
Yes.
for millennia.
Yes. And even my teacher told me, he said, but Padma ji, it's going to be a problem. He said, because the thing is it would be like something I did when I was a kid. I hopped on a motorcycle with no instruction. And I really did this one time. It was my brother's motorcycle. And I got on that motorcycle and he's like trying to tell me what to do. And I'm like, no, I didn't listen to my brother. And I just took off and I wrecked into our neighbor's house because I had a lot of power, didn't know what to do with it, and the other thing too is that this is really something that's meant to become a part of you and long term, like real transformation. And the way the most of the world approaches it is very much like in crisis mode. Like, I'm in a crisis now, so breathe. That's not the time to be trying to calm yourself down and breathe. That's a great way to hyperventilate, If
Yeah,
you've been-
it's something you already have to be able to do in a time of
Yes.
crisis. It's not something you're going to learn at that exact moment.
Yes, I tell people all the time, like, if you've got somebody that's in the moment of crisis, you don't tell them, take a deep breath. You say, what do you need from me?
Yeah.
You don't start telling them what to do. If they haven't been doing it or they haven't been practicing it, then that's the last thing, they need.
Yeah.
And, and so that's kind of what I'm running into now a lot. Like, we're seeing a whole different group of people come in that have been Googling stuff and they now know this and they know that. But the truth is that, like learning to play that trumpet, see, I thought I was really good because I could play Hot Cross Buns, like early on. Then a Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And then I think I learned to play a few songs, but I just memorized the songs. I never practiced. I didn't really learn it as a skill. And bless my teacher's heart, I thought he'd believe me when he said, so did you practice today? And I'd say, oh, yes, I practiced. I didn't realize that he's looking at me going,
No way you
practiced. Practicing. And so when it would come down to it, yeah, I knew some songs, and I could look like I know something. I could play like one scale halfway decent, but I never really learned it. It never became a part of who I was. So I put it down and I wasn't that great. Well, yoga's a skill. It's the same thing. It's like you go in and you got to start with the scales. You start with spread and lift my toes. Do I know? Because one of the most important things you develop, it's called neuroception. A lot of people, as the years pass, they lose neuroception. That's the first lack of that inner leadership that we start to lose, meaning we lose our sense of spatial awareness. I can't tell you how often I can have a 30-something come in. I'll say, inhale, step your right foot behind you, and it'll take them a while to go, inhale, right foot. It takes a while to think about that. But healthy proprioception or neuroception is you can hear inhale, right foot, and you quickly assimilate those and put those together. Also, you learn interoception as part of neuroception, spatial awareness and spatial functionality internally, like all the little muscles and stabilizer muscles that support the spine. Well, over time, if we haven't really learned that skill, physically, as our neuroception is declining, and it looks like the body's declining, but it's not really the body that declines first, it's the mind, because the body does what the mind tells it to. If the mind says, draw your ribs out of your waist and stand tall and smile, keep a happy smile on your face, or whatever, that's what the body's going to do. But if the mind starts getting tired from too much thinking and emotionally distraught and overrun, hadn't really learned the skills, and when the stress really hits the fan, and they can't really shift different, it's like a flower, it's like the body starts to, and that doesn't have to happen. And so in part, one of those most important ways we lead ourselves is learning that neuroception and that functionality. and being able to keep that strong mental, physical coordination and function. I don't even know what I'm answering right now. You
So-
see, I could talk.
So tell me where is Rasa Yoga headed as an organization? What's the next thing? Because it sounds like you're constantly evolving and always looking for that next thing.
Well, that is like that question. That's a great segue, because now I can see where I sort of digress here a little bit. Is that we are a certified or an accredited international yoga therapy school. And the idea of therapy in Sanskrit means the word is chikitsa. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Like in America, when you say, I'm going to therapy, people go, you know. But in the Eastern modalities, therapy means you're really healthy and proactive, and so it's chikitsa.
Self-development.
You're right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's ongoing. It's something you just do for the rest of your life. Well, as an accredited school, we are bringing these people along that we're training, and they need a lot of practicum hours. And they're awesome. We've got medical doctors, psychotherapists, school teachers, school administration that are training in this. And so we are expanding and opening a wellness center.
Huh.
This wellness center is going to be a clinic that is overseen by myself and my program director, who's a certified yoga therapist. And it's giving a place not only for people to be seen at a really nice, low-cost way of being seen, and to be able to experience what Ayurveda Yoga Chikitsa is and how it can improve them and their lives, but it's also giving these, we call them residencies, and giving these residencies opportunities to really connect with people and take what they've learned and work with people with Yoga Chikitsa. So that's our wellness center that's expanding as an extension of not only our general classes, but I also have up-level programs. But we are just kicking off our whole online digital school. And I'm going to have things like online group coaching for anxiety, depression, dealing with fear. I'm going to open up a lot of different categories. Where people by Zoom, we can come in and there'll be group opportunities for that. I'm super thrilled about this because, I just envision, and I having been in the corporate world, I envision and see what it's like for people in the corporate world today. There's so much pressure, so many things coming so fast, emails coming at them at the speed of lightning. I mean, like literally at the speed of light, with texts going off and these expectations. One of my students is a high-level corporate attorney, is flying all over the world, and just this stuff coming at her all the time, where it's like right about like a low-level anxiety, that it hurts. Like I'm on a mission. I want to bring to people and organizations, and if I can do it by Zoom, ways where they can not just hodgepodge it, not just pick up the trumpet, but really learn ways that they can move forward in such a way that this doesn't take over them and they're not at this sort of low level anxiety all the time.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like noble work. I want to thank you for being on.
Thank you. And I love that word noble. It's one of my favorite words, and I really appreciate you for having me and everybody here at the Chamber. I have just a special affinity for the Chamber. I know they can't see them online, but I really do. I tell people all the time, you should always go join the Chamber. It's just karmically speaking, it's the wise thing to do. And I'll have people say to me, but I don't know, I joined and maybe this happened or that happened. I'm like, you can't be worried about all that.
It sounds to me it's a lot like yoga, right? You get into it, what you get out of it, what you put into it.
Yes, you go in and you connect with people.
Yeah.
Because these are the people that keep our community alive. I mean, it's what breathes life into our community. We've got to appreciate one another and just really step into that. Because I'm telling you, even when I was in Pasadena, this is 30 years ago in Pasadena, I was part of the Chamber there. I would do these talks. I'd go into the Rotary Club and they would tease me. They'd be like, "Oh my God, here comes our yogurt girl and the cosmic hippie person." But I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've never heard that before." But they held the greatest respect for me, and even if not one of them walked in through my door, they served me. They would send people to me. I grew. I probably should have said that a long time ago because it's really true.
Yeah.
I believe in the chamber. I think it's just such an important part of being a part of your community, and I think it's worth every dime and more. But I'm not just kissing up, okay?
No. But you guys actually put the time in. I see you guys at events. You sponsor.
Yeah.
You get involved. Super
the
involved.
Clear Lake, but the Clear Lake Chamber though, and I mean the Pasadena is great too, but the Clear Lake Chamber is exceptional though too.
Yeah.
I mean it really is exceptional because there's all these things going on, and it just so happens that a lot of times the things are happening. I'm teaching at night, but I'm always like, dang, I want to go to that after hours thing, or because I want to do everything.
Yeah.
And most recently, I was looking at the mastermind groups, and so I'm really looking to. I think they've gotten started though, but eventually, I really want to get into that. And
Well, it's a lot like you. The chamber's always evolving,
Yes.
and being relevant, and I think that's kind of what the yoga is. It's always kind of staying relevant with who you are in here. And
I love that word too. I love words. The word relevant is so important. A lot of times, like people in the world of yoga, I just got back from an international yoga therapy conference, and we were actually recognized there. And they told us there, and most of the people, I mean, there are millions of dollars being put into yoga research and Ayurveda and yoga research and what it does. And that's the organization we're accredited by. And they said one of the biggest things we're running into now is you have these extremes. Okay, you got this, and it's good to just have it on here. There's this one extreme where it's sort of cult-like. And it's weird. I mean, it's like it's just there's this strangeness, and there is this sort of extreme out there in the world. And there's a whole other extreme where it's like the latest Britney playlist, and we're gonna, and there's these extremes, and it's not really like either one of those. There's this other place, and they were just talking about this at the conference, and it says we need to make it our mission to educate people,
be in the middle.
on what this really brings. And this was one of the reasons why we had this soiree we had, and I'm going to be out there in extended community even more. Like I want to normalize yoga to where it doesn't, and it's people see it for what it really is.
Well, I think this has gone a long way in doing that. So thank you
and
for
making
coming out.
it relevant.
Yeah.
So I want to round back around to that word, because a lot of people out there in the world, yoga is such an ancient practice that sometimes people stick to tradition for tradition's sake, kind of like you keep doing something for Christmas that isn't really working, but somebody in the family keeps insisting on it, you know, tradition for tradition's sake. That, like the chamber, there are probably some chambers out there that do that too. Not this one, though.
It's like self-help books, right? There's a lot of them out there, and people do one, but yoga is the physical practice of probably a lot of what those self-help books say.
Yes. And just staying relevant.
Absolutely. It sounds to me like you'll always stay relevant.
That sounds like a
always
song.
Growing.
The Clear Lake Chamber and Rasa Yoga. Stay in relevant. Stay in relevant. Stay in relevant.